One day.
Let me leave you a message.
I don't have voicemail.
He knows something that we don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Know to text me, or if I miss their call, they're gonna call back.
No, mine are.
I'll look left, yeah. Well, that's actually. Yeah, I don't think the messages.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call today's meeting to order of the March 21st Roanoke Valley-Alleghany Regional Commission. And welcome everyone today. Before we do the roll, we have a person that wishes to participate remotely, Mr. James Griffith, representing Alleghany County. And he can do that under the commission's policy for electronic meeting participation. So with that, unless there's an objection, we have a motion to do that. If someone objects, anyone object to his remote participation? Hearing none, welcome, Mr. Griffith. I assume you're out there. Okay. With that, I think we'll just have a roll call today by going around the room and introducing yourself. I'm Jim Wallace. I'm from the city of Salem.
I'm Lori Smith from Franklin County.
David Radford from Roanoke County. Bill North, Roanoke County.
Frank Rose, town of Benton.
Carrie Green, Franklin County.
Dean Martin, Roanoke County.
Debbie Bottomov, town of Clifton Forge.
Chuck Unruh, town of Clifton Forge. Maybe Sexton, town of Benton.
Hunter Holiday, city of Salem.
Barbara Dirk, city of Roanoke. Dawn Erdman, city of Roanoke.
Peter Ballson, city of Roanoke.
Amy White, Botetourt County.
Reed Walters, Allegheny County.
Virginia Marlin, the Regional Commission.
Jeremy Holmes of the Regional Commission.
How about the outside perimeter, please?
James Griffith of Alleghany County.
Gabriel Ebride, Regional Commission.
Anita Maryland, town of Benton Planning Department. Elizabeth Elmore, Regional Commission. Allison Stinnett, Regional Commission.
Stanton, Regional Commission.
Kevin Rosenberg, Regional Commission.
Eddie Wells.
Madam McGee with the Regional Commission. Sophie Kinger, Regional Commission.
Thank you, everyone. Next item on today's agenda is approval of our consent agenda items. You may notice something just a little bit unusual, and that's item B, which was ratification of actions taken by the executive committee on February 22nd. We lack a quorum, so we ended up having an executive session meeting so the folks from CERTI could give their report. So that's what that's about. So if there's any other questions, I'll entertain them. If not, I'll also entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda for the day.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. North.
I can second.
Thank you, sir. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on for opening remarks today. We received notice from the offices of Senators Kane and Warner and from Congressman Morgan Griffith's office that the application period for their congressionally directed spending programs, I guess also known as earmarks, either are or soon will be open. And during a recent visit with Congressman Griffith's office organized by the Virginia Association of Planning District Commissions, Congressman Griffith shared that water infrastructure and transportation are his project priorities for funding in the 9th District. If your locality is interested in applying for CDS funding for any project and would like technical assistance, please reach out to Mr. Holmes. He will get you connected for assistance. And I would just say this is real money. I think the city of Salem received about $3.5 million a year or so for replacement of a bridge. So there's money to be had if you're just willing to ask for it. And then the commission staff that supports the Roanoke Valley Collective Response were recently invited to participate in an initiative led by the First Lady of Virginia's office. Awareness campaign called "It Only Takes One" is focused on the dangers of fentanyl and the need for parents to talk to their children about those dangers. The campaign was launched earlier this year and is currently being tested in the Roanoke Valley before expanding statewide. Commission Director Robert Knapp worked on the First Lady's office to coordinate the launch event and continues to engage with them as the First Lady works to spread this important message. So if you would like some more information on this campaign or access materials, please see Robert. Is Robert here today?
He has a meeting conflict here.
Okay, but I think everyone knows who Robert Nat is, so please feel free to reach out to Robert if you have questions about those programs. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Holmes for his executive director's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Want to share just a couple of quick items. So I recently had the chance to attend the National Association of Planning, National Association of Development Organizations Washington Policy Conference in DC. That conference is a chance to interact with many of the federal funding agencies that we work with, EDA and ARC, among others. This year, we did receive news that EDA, with whom we have a partnership planning grant, do the SEDS and other economic development work, has the first bipartisan reauthorization bill that agency has seen in 20 years. The lack of a reauthorization bill has resulted in, amongst other things, stagnant funding levels for EDA, and the almost constant threat of just shutting the agency down, which comes up almost every single Congress. So there's a bipartisan Senate bill for reauthorization that's moving its way through. Working on building support in the House, so we're excited about that. We rely a lot on EDA, and many of you have probably applied for and received various sorts of infrastructure projects through the EDA. Through reauthorization, if it goes through, will, amongst other things, triple the partnership planning fund pot that organizations like us receive to do economic development work, as well as remove the local match. Right now, that's a 50-50 match that we have to make to the EDA. So if you lower or eliminate that match, which will free up other local funds to do other kinds of broader planning efforts that we can't do now. So that work is underway, and I may be reaching out to folks if there's a need for some support in the House, and I hope that you will do so. We'll share some information when as that moves forward. A little bit more fun. I did want to get you on your calendars. The city of Salem is hosting us again for our annual Salem Red Sox game. And I know it seems pretty far out, but we always have to plan pretty far ahead to make sure we get a home game. So I wanted it to be on your calendars. August 21st, we'll be meeting at the city of Salem in our usual the city box there for hot dogs, hamburgers, and baseball. So make sure you get that on your calendar. You'll get more information from Virginia as we get closer to that. I don't want you to miss it. And last thing, just on a quick personal note, I did want to share, I am going out of the country for the next 2 weeks to Kazakhstan. So I will be 9 hours in the future. You're very difficult to reach me. So I want to let you know, if anything comes up, you're welcome to reach out to Sherry Dean in our office, and Tori Williams has agreed to be the local me, or at least a bridge between you and me if you guys need anything during the next 2 weeks. I will leave Monday and be back around the 10th. Maybe we can do a little bit of Russian by the time I get back, so we'll see how that is. So I just wanted to share that with you. If there's anything you need from me before I go, please reach out, let me know. I'm happy to try to help. But that is all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs. He's really optimistic. He's coming back. If you look at it.
It's not good. It's not good.
We have talked about contingency planning in the event that Mr. Hobbs does not return,
I
so.
hope we don't see a Wall Street Journal
Did you
ad
say
with this picture.
Kazakhstan?
Kazakhstan, yeah.
My daughter lived in Almaty
That's where I'm
for over a year, and she flew for Air Astana, which was the airline there.
Mr. North has been the most pessimistic about my.
I'm very concerned about this trip.
Thank you.
We need to call the CIA and have to keep an eye on his safety evaluation.
That's right. So, okay, moving on to item 5 on today's agenda would be the urban tree canopy assessment overview. And we'd like to ask Ms. McGee to come forward and tell us about her progress there, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you all hear me okay? All right. So, you may have seen in the work program last year that we had the urban tree canopy assessment. We did just complete that, and so I'm here to report out on it to you. The full assessment is in your packet. But this is just a high level report. So this covered Roanoke County, the city of Salem, the city of Roanoke, and the town of Benton. I wanted to first touch base on what is urban tree canopy. This mic does not like me. I'm projecting too loudly. So tree canopy that covers either pervious or impervious surfaces in urban or built areas, but this study did cover the entirety of Roanoke County. The benefits of tree canopy, for those who are not familiar, include reduced stormwater runoff, shade and heat reduction, beautification, improved property values. So this is why we care about the tree canopy in the area. This project was funded in part through the Virginia Department of Forestry. The award was $24,860. We did have a cash match from the localities of the Roanoke County, City of Salem, and Town of Benton, as you can see here. We also had staff time contributions. The Regional Commission staff time contribution is included there. So over $8,000 in staff time contributions. So that's the money that we spent on this. Okay, so what do we get for that money? We got the report that you saw. We also got a bunch of data. So that the data is in GIS largely. These are layers that can be used by your locality staff to do a lot of different things we're going to talk about here. But the specific analysis that was done included the tree canopy coverage itself, impervious surface, and possible planting areas. There was a jurisdiction by jurisdiction analysis. So for each of the localities, there was a floodplain level analysis. There was a unified land use analysis, and then the last level of analysis that was done was by census block group. And that data is what we're probably going to build the most on, but all of these are really helpful, and they were determined by your staff as being the most helpful ways to look at this data for them. So what did we find out? So 67% of the overall region, which does include some of the rural parts of Roanoke County, is urban tree canopy in this report. 19% possible planting area, and 11% impervious surface. Overall, there is a potential to nearly double tree canopy in our most urban localities. That includes the town of Benton, the city of Salem, and the city of Roanoke. Roanoke County obviously has the most tree coverage. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. The city of Roanoke has the least percentage of tree canopy coverage. It's probably not a surprise either. Highlighted everything on there that I wanted to highlight. So we can use the mapping of this data to drill into our potential planting areas. And I have been told by some of your staff that you're already using it that way to look at development applications and different things and understand exactly what the tree impacts are going to be. We can also use, as you can see here, the floodplain analysis to think about potential grant applications in riparian buffer areas, which would have the maximum impact for your MS4, which is your permits through DEQ to address stormwater and water quality in the region. 25% of the floodplain is available for planting in each of these localities, with more of the floodplain available in Roanoke County. And then the city of Salem's urban tree canopy itself is actually the lowest percentage. You can see on this graph that the dark green is the urban tree canopy and the light green is the potential planting area. So while Salem doesn't have quite as much of a potential planting area as Roanoke County does, they have the least urban tree canopy, so might see the most benefits from trying to plant out these areas. I do want to mention that we do every year, the Arbor Day funding for, town of Benton, city of Roanoke, and the city of Salem, which is through the Virginia Trees for Clean Water Grant, that's through the Virginia Department of Forestry. And so there are opportunities to look at this type of planting in particular, if there's interest to your locality. The other really interesting takeaway I want to point out, that was of most interest, I think, to your staff as well, and our follow-up call that we had with them, is that a large percentage of the potential planting area in this analysis is on residential properties. And so that raises, of course, some complications with planting out, because it is private property. So trees are very expensive. So one of the things that we discussed in our staff call is the possibility of support for residential tree planting programs, and then also education for landowners may be an important element to look at. So that's something that might help shape some of your forestry programs at your local level. So what happens next? Next steps include working with local government staff to identify gaps in existing programming for maintaining tree canopy in our region. We've already had an initial call with your staff that were on the steering committee for this effort to kind of talk about some of their challenges and how this data feeds into their programming and their work. We also are looking into the cost effectiveness of a subscription service for tracking change in tree canopy. This is really important because, as you may know, we did do a study of tree canopy back in like 2009, 2010. That methodology has changed so much in the past 10 or plus years, that we can't actually make an apples to apples comparison between that tree canopy assessment that was done back then and the tree canopy assessment that we did this time. So one of the big questions that I've gotten from people about this data is, well, how has it changed? That's really important to kind of a narrative about why this is important to our region, but we don't have that data yet. So one of the options would be a subscription service. Another option would be to do this study again in 5 to 10 years, depending on what everybody's interest is. Then, of course, I mentioned the census block group data. I pointed out, the land use, some of the land use takeaways, the floodplain takeaways. The census block group data we can use to make some predictions about how this is impacting our equity in the region and property values and things like that. But we don't have that level of analysis done yet. That was not included in this assessment, but we have the data that we could begin to build that out. That is in our work program draft for next year. So that would be approved by y'all if that was a project that you were interested in funding. And then considering further ecosystem services benefits, quantification of just exactly what the dollar value is of our tree canopy coverage is not included in this assessment, but it's something that we could build on in the future. So those are the next kind of big data gaps and things that we would be looking at the regional level with this data. Any questions for anyone?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
Amanda, did you differentiate between native trees and the ornamental trees?
No, ma'am. So the level of analysis that they do is they get the aerial images and they go in and just kind of code what is actual tree canopy coverage versus other vegetation versus impervious surface. So they cannot at that level differentiate between tree species. So if we wanted to look more at kind of more of a tree inventory or species inventory, that would be something that we would have to find further funding on.
And I know in my neighborhood, so many of the trees that were planted when the neighborhood was first established are reaching maturity. And so a lot of them are being cut down.
That is something that we had discussed in our follow-up call. There's the aging of the tree canopy, but also capacity to plant trees, because once you plant them, you do have to maintain them for a couple of years, like active watering. And So that's a challenge for locality staff.
Well, and they're planting these ornamentals underneath the utility lines, so they won't need to be trimmed extensively. But they are not the same as some of our larger tree species.
Any other questions about this?
Thank you for that presentation. I was a little bit disappointed to hear that Salem was last on the list in terms of tree canopy, but we're gonna try to work on that, so.
Oh, you have so many balls.
Happy to help.
Thank you, Ms. Meader.
Thank you.
So moving down the agenda, the next item is item 6, which is the administration of the Glade Creek Phase 3 preliminary engineering plan. I asked Mr. Williams to tell us a little bit about that.
Sure.
Mr.
Good
Williams?
afternoon, Chair, members of the commission. I'll refer you to page 70 in this rather lengthy packet. What you're being asked to do today is essentially provide signatory authority to Mr. Holmes to allow staff here at the Regional Commission to administer preliminary engineering for the Glade Creek Phase 3 project in the town of Benton. That project was awarded the STBG funds in 2022. And we've been working with them and VDOT to position ourselves to procure consulting services just for the preliminary engineering phases of that project. And Mr. Sexton and Ms. McMillan are here today as a backup in case anybody has any questions about the scope of that project. It should be pretty straightforward. All we're doing is seeking a signatory authority. There are currently, I believe, 4 members of the commission staff that have been certified under the locally administered projects qualification program. So if you have any questions on the scope of the project, Mr. Sexton, Ms. McMillan can answer. Otherwise, you can see the resolution on the following page. Anybody have any questions I can answer?
There are no questions. I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Belosion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries, Mr. Holmes. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next item today is number 7, is the draft fiscal year 2025 work program review. And is Mr. Martin here today, Mr. Holmes?
He is not here, so I will run us through this. Very
The
quickly.
floor is yours, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you. Mr. Martin is chair of the work program committee, so we gave him the opportunity to speak, but he's a little more retired now, so we're glad to have him when we can, and he's not able to make it today. But I wanted to walk the board really quickly through the draft of the work program as it currently exists, just so you can see some of the projects that are in line, providing the initial feedback. This process is ongoing, so this is not the last opportunity to comment on or potentially get projects into the work program. This document, for those of you who have been through this process before or been at the commission a while, this document establishes the primary projects and activities the commission will undertake in the next fiscal year. It is not necessarily a comprehensive list of everything that we will do. We always leave space for additional technical assistance, grant writing, the ability to bring other projects on board, but it does establish some of the space for some of the larger projects and our priorities for the subsequent year. It's a combination of ongoing and mandated things that we have to do, such as like hazard mitigation plan and something like that you'll see in there. We do solicit, many of you participated in the project solicitation process that we launched in January. So we solicit all our localities for project ideas. And then we listen to you throughout the year and develop project ideas internally that get integrated into the work program for your review. This document is the commission work program. Those of you who were also on the TPO earlier, you saw the approval of the unified planning work program for the TPO. We take some of those projects and highlight them in here just so you can see stuff that's kind of outside of the regular TPO scope of work and understand what commission staff is doing. And you can see that we have a work program committee that is kind of the first pass at reviewing this. Mr. Martin, Stephanie Reynolds of City of Roanoke, Chuck Unruh, Clifton Forge, and Robert Wood of Rocky Mount. They met last Monday for a much more comprehensive review of the walkthrough that you're going to get today. And we will expect to bring the final work program with final budget numbers and so forth back to you in April or May, depending on how long it takes to finalize some items. There are four, I'll touch on real quick. There are 4 project requests that we received that we are still working on identifying a potential scope of whether or not they'll make the final work program. We received a request from Allegheny County to potentially assist on the comprehensive plan development. That is looking at being scoped out. We received a request for a childcare market study. That was a local request, but we're looking at whether or not if it makes sense to pursue regionally. But we also know that there are local efforts, the United Way, some statewide efforts that have already taken place here. So we're still determining what role we can play in filling in work that hasn't already been done. You might remember last month, we were approached by Virginia Tech to potentially participate in a National Science Foundation autonomous transit study that they plan on undertaking next year that will be focused on autonomous transit in a rural locality. The application is going through next month, so we won't know until a little bit later in the spring whether or not that project has been approved by the NSF and whether that will be something we need to commit time to. So that's still kind of floating out there. And finally, we've had a request for looking at developing a rural internship program. So the idea here would be the commission would hire an intern who might be here 3 days a week and then be embedded in one of our rural localities for 1 day a week to understand what it's like to do public admin and those particular needs of rural localities. So we've had conversations with Virginia Tech and Roanoke College so far on sort of what that might look like. And some other ways we might be able to pay for that. So that's still in development. That's why you are going to see it before. The full document is in your packet. Projects that you see highlighted are new projects or substantially different projects from previous years. The scope is maybe changed or it's in another phase. And we haven't yet finalized the hours and funding sources for every single project. So you might see funding source XXX and waiting to figure out what that looks like. And I do want to emphasize the work program committee has seen a previous, this initial draft and is supportive of what you've got in your packet so far. I do want to highlight just a couple of the projects that we're looking at so you can sort of see the scope of some of the newer stuff. We are looking at carrying out a rural transportation summit for a number of reasons. Rural transportation funding, the formula for that hasn't changed in 20 some odd years, and it's built on some numbers that are probably at this point antiquated, if not just outright irrelevant. And further, our rural transportation program that we have to plan here at the commission is $58,000. That hasn't changed in decades either. That's as much money as we get to do all of the rural support that we try to provide for our member localities. So we're looking at hosting a summit that would bring together General Assembly folks, VDOT folks, other stakeholders to talk about that issue, to advocate for it, and to potentially at least introduce an action plan for change to address bringing additional resources to our rural communities. We're building more room for rural microtransit. We're currently working on a project with Clifton Forge in Allegheny County, a potential study for essentially like an Uber bus. You would call it on your phone, but it's a transit service that is being deployed in rural counties elsewhere in Virginia. So we're planning on taking what we've learned from that project and making it available to other rural communities in our area next year. Hopefully that process will be more efficient. We will have done it once. We've had a lot of discussions over the last year about issues concerning homelessness in the region, how it's impacting the greenways, the intersection with housing stock. We do host the Blue Ridge Interagency Council on Homelessness, and they have a lot of data, and I don't know that that data always makes it up to this body. So we're going to work more closely with them, providing report outs, information, context, education for what's happening with homelessness in the region, the trends, where that's coming from, and potentially look at doing a regional housing summits if that's really the key to the problem is other places for folks to live. We are undertaking or looking to undertake an economic impact of the Roanoke Valley Greenway Network. One of those never done that before. So this would look, we expect, primarily at how the Greenway Network is being used to attract and retain talent, and potential business development along the urban greenway, what businesses are committing, because that's a resource that they have for their employers. We have, for example, ton of Carillion folks go out and walk on the greenway during their lunch breaks at the hospital. That is a benefit for those folks. And can we measure kind of what that means for economic impact, along with things like recreation, tourism, public health impacts, and so forth. We are working on what's called a Soul Smart designation. This is a solar renewable energy designation. And basically what this means is the commission would be designated, and it would both put pressure on us and allow us to bring additional resources largely for staff training on things like zoning and ordinances, environmental impacts, permitting, so that your staff, a lot of you are facing questions of solar installation and community utility scale solar. So we can provide some additional assistance, but also markets the area as an area where we're paying attention to that. And there are businesses out there who have solar energy requirements as part of their portfolios for relocation and development. So that sort of helps, maybe market the region. And this would be both for urban rooftop solar projects as well as rural, kind of more agricultural or again, community or utility scale solar. If you're at the TPO, you saw in the UPWP, we're looking at a truck parking study. This is a request from Roanoke County. One of the things that came out of the pandemic is everyone's ordering stuff online and they want it in 2 days, and that's creating all kinds of interesting dynamics and trucking and freight. When a truck arrives Sunday night to deliver something Monday morning, where are they parked? And it's generally in a gravel lot or on the side of a road or under a bridge somewhere. What are the issues surrounding that? VDOT has done some work, the ARC has done some work, and we're going to try to kind of complement those efforts. Hopefully, primarily to identify what are public sector solutions, but what are also private sector solutions for the warehouses that are creating this kind of demand. Should there be requirements or regulations that they provide parking, for example. So that's all I'm going to talk about. Again, the work program committee sat through an hour and a half of the comprehensive project review. I wanted to highlight those as some of the big things we're doing. You'll see there's transportation, there's housing, homelessness, economic development, kind of within the range of what we're looking at. Sort of our next steps, we're continuing to refine the scopes of projects as needed. Sometimes that will require executing a project agreement with the locality, so everyone's on board with what are the milestones, what are the deliverables that the locality or project sponsor expects. So we'll be working on that, particularly for those of you who have locality requests. Finalize the budget, set our internal milestones. The work program committee will review this in April. Depending on the timeline, we'll either have final here for the April meeting or maybe bump to the May meeting if there's more work to be done. And that's when this body will review and approve the work program at that point. Although I always want to emphasize that doesn't mean that's it. That if it's not in there, we don't do it. That's kind of the goals for next year, but there's plenty of space to bring other projects on. I went through that pretty fast, but are there any initial questions, feedback, thoughts from the board about the process or anything that you saw, those example projects or anything that you had questions about or thoughts?
It says in here on greenways that these are greenways that are used for recreational use. And you gave an example of the Appalachian Trail, so I can understand that, and there's one for the Triple Crown too. That Mill Mountain has 10 miles of natural surface trail, and I know in some of your communities, you have natural surface, trails, which are mainly used for recreation. And with that Craig Valley Scenic Trail, I've been trying to tell you all that it was transportation. So, don't know if that's taken hold or not, but that might be included.
And I should note, greenways as an example, there's pieces of that you see in the commission work program that focuses on the recreational part. There's pieces of that in the TPO work program that focuses on like the urban paved network that it is more used as a transportation facility in addition to a recreational facility. So something like the greenways is we often cobble it together from a couple different sources to be able to kind of do the full scope, but we do look at both the functional and the recreational components of the greenways as a big thing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holmes. Everyone around this room pays in dues to this organization, so please take advantage of some of the services that they're offering, because I think they could be beneficial. All right, next item will be item 8 on our agenda, which is the CERTI organizational assessment final document. And again, Mr. Holmes, anything you want to say about that?
I will just hopefully go through this even quicker, because many of you were here last month, CERTI presented the organizational assessment. So what you have in your packet is the final report. What you saw in February was sort of the preliminary recommendations, and they took some feedback from some folks who were here to incorporate that in the final report. That's in your packet. I'm going to touch real quickly on a little bit of that process. I will just kind of preview what you have is not substantially different than what was presented in February. So I know there was some discussion that the resulting actions and so forth that were came out of that, not terribly affected necessarily by that discussion. So it's a little bit of background. We last did this in 2017 before the 2019 plan. So it's been 7 years since we last did something like this. And this focuses on sort of the organizational capacity. This isn't necessarily our strategic plan that informs this strategic plan. The assessment involved a survey to all board members, a survey to regional leaders. And in this document, you see those survey results. We did not have that in February. So if you look through there, you'll see the answers that they used to drive their recommendations. They also did focus groups with every locality. So they sat down with everybody that they could get in the room and kind of had conversations with them to inform the results. The executive committee did sit down on the 18th and discuss this in terms of identifying some immediate actions. But more of that will come through the work program, the strategic plan process. As I noted, nothing is significantly different from February, and maybe more notably, nothing is significantly different than the 2017 assessment. So a lot of the things that you see here are good or ill, very similar to some of the feedback they got in 2017. The items that they kind of came up with, I've highlighted some of those things and the things we're already doing toward that. This is not to say that there's not more to be done, but I just want to kind of point out some of the things that are already underway for that assessment. So they recommended, for example, a comprehensive orientation program. I do try to meet with members one-on-one. Ms. White and I just scheduled a meeting between the TPO and now for her orientation, both the TPO and the commission. And we last year did a Zoom-based orientation for new TPO and commission members that was largely attended by locality staff who were new to the region, which was useful for them to understand the organization. But we're going to look at what other improvements we can make to that orientation process. A new item, this is probably the only thing that was really brand new, was there's a recommendation for the commission to hold sort of orientation sessions locally with boards and staff. So there's those of you who are on the commission that go through the orientation, but you all have boards of supervisors and county and council members and so forth who don't regularly participate. So one of CERTI's recommendations is that we go out at least annually, meet with the whole group and locality staff to talk about projects, to talk about what this organization does, and build stronger communication with the folks who are on the commission. Increased communication by routinely being at jurisdiction meetings and functions. Many of you, I've had the pleasure of standing in front of for our annual report over the last couple of months. And our next work program is more focused on staff who are working on projects such as you saw from Amanda McGee on the urban tree canopy, is making sure we take those out to you. And so again, your full boards see things, some of the projects that have an impact on your regions, that we do better at trying to get that information out to the extent that it's useful, and we work with your staff and administration to do that. And we're looking at or revitalizing a liaison program that Wayne Strickland had organized years ago. We just had staff come out, just attend meetings just to listen in, so we're gonna look at whether that makes sense. Jokes about Kazakhstan aside, the recommendations for planning for succession did come up. That a lot of that came from Wayne Strickland had been here 40 years, and I became the assistant 6 months before he left. So what can we do to build stronger succession planning in for the future? So we're going to look at how we better have our hierarchy of decision making, and we're doing talent development within the organization. So if I don't come back from my next adventure, whoever is ready to move into that seat is kind of ready to go. And then the last thing was just increase staff interaction with rural localities. One of the things hopefully you should see in the work program is a bigger emphasis on projects in our rural localities, such as the Transportation Summit. And the rural internship program I mentioned is a way to build connections, to embed staff in our rural localities and to help build connections with our colleges and universities in the region. So quick summary of some of the items. There's a lot more work to look at the implementation of that. The next step will be the work program next year has an update of our strategic plan. So we will look at those recommendations as part of that planning process. We will look at the formation of our strategic plan committee next fiscal year. We'll review that document and others to update our plan. Some of you may be lucky enough to be asked to serve on that committee. So don't raise your hand too quickly. Continue with that next year, and then do better at reporting back to you progress on the strategic plan throughout the year. So again, quick update, not much different from February. If you're encourage you to look at the assessment. If you have any questions in the future, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to talk to you about this.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm optimistic that your team can work so that we don't have a three-peat on some of these suggestions when the next review comes. So hopefully we can make some progress there. So thank you for that. The next item on our agenda is staff highlights. So I'd kind of ask Jeremy, for the benefit of everyone in the room, if he could just have each meeting going forward, a couple of members of his staff just stand up for a minute or two and introduce themselves and tell us what they're doing and what they're working on. Just a very short 1 to 2 minute brief comment period. And maybe you guys will have a better idea of some of the capabilities that the team possesses after hearing these folks speak. So with that, I'll ask Sophie to lead off and just tell us whatever you'd like to say for 2 minutes.
I'm over here. I'm Sophie Chickering. I'm currently an intern for the commission. I started here in January. I'm a senior at Roanoke College, so I'm originally from Southwest Florida, but I've been in the area since fall 2020, and I love it up here. Amazing place. And I'm currently working on a couple different projects for the commission, some GIS and some research projects.
Thank you. How about Gabriel?
Sir. Stand up here. Good afternoon, members of the board. Gabriel Edigrai. I'm a regional planner here at the commission. Coming up on my 4-year work anniversary. And I'm in our community development department, focused on our environmental programs. One of the things I'd like to highlight is our Roanoke County Septic System Education and Pump Out Program that we're working with Roanoke County Stormwater on to provide cost-free pump outs to low-income residents in Roanoke County. That's been a great program to start to address the issues of aging septic systems in the region, and we're looking to expand the program to other parts of the service area, hopefully for a spot in Todd County. Like I said, I've been here 4 years. I'm a graduate of Virginia Tech. So as I was kind of looking at my post-grad opportunities, really enjoyed Southwest Virginia and the Roanoke region, and felt like it was had the amenities that I was looking for, and was lucky enough to have an opportunity to join the regional commission, and been trying to recruit folks ever since. So it's a great place to live, and I really enjoy my time here.
Thank you, Gabrielle. How about Allison?
Hello, everyone. My name is Allison Sinet. I am a transportation planner here, and this week is my 2-year anniversary being here. So I am from Roanoke. I grew up here my whole life, and I really enjoyed my time at Virginia Tech, and then I got my master's degree, and I specialized in transportation. So that is what led me here. A project that I have a lot of projects going on right now, but one of them, we're coming to the end of the micro transit for Clifton Forge in Allegheny County, doing the public engagement summary for that. We had a 40-day public period, and we had almost 300 people respond. So that's one project, and also updating the public participation plan. That's been ongoing for a couple months now. So I also do transportation project like programming and the keeping of the database of transportation projects and such. So, and that's pretty much it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Jeremy, do people really need to know what you do? Do we know?
I was there because I was gonna go first so that the rest of them felt more comfortable, but they did fine. They didn't need me to go first. I will only just share, I'm about to enter my 18th year here at the commission. I'm a Roanoke College graduate and a Hollins University graduate, so 100% locally educated. Was a tech first semester today. And I'm pleased to be here, and I really appreciate you inviting staff up to talk a little bit about themselves. They do a great job, and I think they don't often get recognition for what happens in these offices and how much time it takes to move projects forward. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. We appreciate getting to learn a little something about the staff. So moving on, the next item 10 would be reports from standing committees. And we have a good rest.
We do not have a report from Brian today. But a report from
And then, Ms. McGee, is there anything you need to tell us about the River Blueway Advisory today?
No, just that I am back and we're having our next meeting in April, actually next week. So I hope that I'll have more to report out next time.
All right, thank you. And I guess,
Mr. Chair,
yes,
I
ma'am.
read in the paper that they're taking down a dam in Danville. Has anybody considered the possibility of taking down the Niagara Dam to allow more free flow of the Roanoke River?
I'm not aware of any discussions, but would that be the Roanoke Valley Resource Authority maybe that would have oversight of the dam, or is it AEP?
I think that's an AEP.
It is an A, dam, Mr. Chair, apologies. So, I will speak to that really briefly. The Niagara Dam is currently, being relicensed by the federal electoral, whatever they're called. So, and they are, at the end of that process currently. So we are expecting to see, the draft of that new license in the next couple of months. And the final kind of big comment period on that will be in the next couple of months, but they will be relicensed at the end of that process for 40 more years. So at this time, there are no discussions with legs about taking out the Niagara Dam. So.
Thank you. Ms. Stark, I guess it's not coming down anytime soon.
Well, it's been on the table before, and there's been some discussion about whether it's serving its purpose, and I know that we heard there was bad chemicals behind it, but we're also hearing that that's not true. So perhaps we need to reevaluate the positives and the negatives to having that dam in place.
All right, thank you. The next is the collective response. I believe Mr. Nat is at another meeting today. Does Mr. Wells have anything for the Economic Development Committee report?
I know just a brief update, for the commission. So the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy Committee met here on March 13th. Most of our meeting was, spent around talking about, the next update for the SEDS document. SEDS document is a 5-year document. We're reaching the end of that. We're also just happen to be reaching the end of our first 3-year grant cycle with EDA. So we're talking about what needs to be included in the document, what needs to be included in the work that the commission is doing for the next grant application. We discussed that. We talked about the new SEDS website, which everyone on the committee seems to be pleased with. So that's good. I think our next meeting is going to be at Riverdale here in Roanoke on March 1st, it'll be March 1st or March 8th. So that is moving forward, and I would expect the commission will see the 2024 update of the SID document at our June meeting for.
I have a question. When's the next meeting?
It's either May 1st or May 8th. We originally got it for May 8th. I think we're going to have to move that based on the Riverdale's busy meeting sites. They're moving along. We're there right now, so we may move it to May 1st.
You're still having debate on the top projects. Is that still working through?
Yeah, the most of our localities have submitted their updates to the project package of the 120 out of the list. The overall regional projects that we worked on from the Roanoke committee, Mr. North, will be changed when we do the full SEDS update. So those 7 will probably, I think we still want to expand them to 10 or 12 projects. I think we can do that pretty easily. I guess one of the other things to mention now for people to think about, one of the items we're going to include in the EDA grant and our work program, the commission's work program for next year is the updated PID study, the Transportation Economic Development Study. We did a few years ago. Corey and I are going to be working on that. So we'll have transportation staff and community development staff working on that. Hopefully that will get underway this summer or fall. That was a fairly lengthy process last time, 6 months, 9 months, I believe. So we'll be doing that again. So that'll be a good time to thinking about projects. Impact that.
Right, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that information. Next item will be the legislative committee report, and I guess Mr. Holmes is going to tell us about all our successes that we achieved. So,
Well, the legislative committee has not met since we finalized the agenda and got it out at the start of the General Assembly session. We will have to schedule a meeting soon. And folks know the goal of that, doing that this year was to experiment, see if it worked, to see what our measures of success are, determine when we were successful this year. So the committee will probably meet the next month or so, assuming any progress is made at the General Assembly, to look at what the legislation looked like this year and where that fit into our priorities. So we should have a report probably at the May meeting.
thank you. Any questions about the work of the committee? All right. Any other business anyone wants to bring before the commission today?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, Amy White, I'm the new girl in town. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. I know a lot of you, but nice to meet the ones I don't. With respect to what you said, a couple of you mentioned housing, and we know that's an issue in our region. I wanted to let this group know that the Roanoke Collaboration Project is having a housing, I guess, affordable housing, I would call it a summit. It is going to be April 11th. And it is at, Virginia Tech Carilion, at the medical school building number 4 there. They have a panel of, 4 speakers to be there to discuss housing in our region. So I could forward you this email that I got about it. And if anyone's interested, you could pass on, that information. You can RSVP through that. I don't have a website for it. That's what I was kind of looking for, but they don't have it on a website that I can refer you to, but there's an RSVP in this email. So I'll send that to you, Jeremy. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Ms. White.
Sure thing.
Anybody else? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah, the commission supports several other committees, and I attended the bicycle pedestrian committee meeting last month, and they said that Bike to Work Day is the 3rd Friday in May, and there's going to be a mayor's bike ride. And I was hoping the information would come through the TTC, the TPO. So I look forward to you knowing more about it.
Well, thank you, and I encourage you to encourage Salem's mayor to participate too, so.
I already volunteered to put train wheels on the bike.
Thank you, Mr. Holly. I think it might happen. Anyone else have any comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn today.
Motion to
Happy
adjourn.
Happy Easter.
All in favor? Thank you, and I wish everyone a happy holiday, and if you're lucky enough to enjoy tomorrow, have a great time of it.